Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to this webinar. My name's Phil Oldfield. I'm a client services consultant here at Macro 4.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sam Dix. I'm also a client services consultant here at Macro 4. And for those of you that have been attending our recent webinars, you'll notice the format's a little bit different. That's due to circumstances beyond our control. For now, we're going to be starting. If you have any questions or you want to put some chat to us, then down here somewhere there is the icon for Q&A and text chat, so please use that. And just so you know, we are recording this webinar.
That's right. So this is the third and final legacy application decommissioning webinar. The previous ones being on data security, also on compliance and business risk. But this one that we've got for you today is on increasing business efficiency, and that includes saving time and money. And when we're talking about, business efficiency and saving money today, for legacy application decommissioning projects, we found that data security and compliance have to be your key drivers for these projects, because these can lead to sort of greater costs in the long term. I'm talking about things like, reputational damage to your business for data breaches, but also, for more tangible things like fines, regulatory fines.
Yeah, compliance, Phil. Yeah, compliance, that side of things.
Absolutely. And following on from that, key issues or drivers for legacy application decommissioning projects, we found that these common ones tend to be, that too much money is spent supporting these problematic or aging legacy applications. But also from a sort of user point of view, business users, having to access multiple applications for both historic and current information leads to certain business inefficiencies in the processes that those applications support. So really, there's many reasons to get rid of these problem applications. But when you do that, you need to maintain access and provide business continuity by keeping hold of the data that underpins those applications themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. Well, let's talk about increasing business efficiency for now to start with. First of all, supporting a legacy application distracts you, and when I mean you, the IT department, as well as the business, from new IT initiatives that the business themselves want. And also, supporting those legacy applications, it's a drain on resources. What else can staff work on? If you're having to keep an eye on a certain server or an old application or an old database, surely you've got better time spent elsewhere. And that itself can hold you back hold back the business itself from things like digital initiatives, for example, transformation. And we're not just talking about modernization of applications, we're talking about true digital transformation itself. And that in turn can damage your company's credibility. Do you want to be known for using outdated and, obsolescent applications? Probably not.
Absolutely. So I touched upon earlier that one of the drivers for these projects being the need for sort of business efficiency. But what's a driver for business efficiency itself? So these can be things like the business, they're always wanting kind of new features and functionality, and they need that delivered as soon as possible to help them remain competitive. But also things like capacity demands, they're growing year on year as businesses grow. And of course, you're always going to have sort of operational and maintenance costs. So trying to reduce that in any way is always sort of paramount for IT departments. And then following on from all of these, you've got the fact that legacy applications, they might not meet those modern business needs. So for example, some of the legacy applications could have been written 15, 20 years ago. Some of them may be even considered obsolete. And further to that point, applications such as those, they might not meet those compliance standards that we all have to adhere to today. But in decommissioning those legacy applications, you're going to be, it's pretty certain you're going to be reducing both the support costs, but also you're going to be able to refocus that precious IT resource and the budget onto more sort of strategic solutions such as digital transformation, and all of that then in turn adds value to your business.
Yeah, Phil, I mean, you mentioned costs there. I mean, let's talk about the huge costs of maintaining these legacy applications. There's an Information Week article that we saw a little while ago. It's still available online, and in that article they talk about the high percentage of budgets spent maintaining legacy applications, and that the available specialist skills for some of these applications, that could be the application itself, the database, the server platform that the application is running on. Those skills will be decreasing, and the knowledge with those skills will be decreasing as well. For example, staff retiring, that side of things. And the change itself for the need to actually get off these applications is driven by the high cost of operating and maintaining these legacy applications. And if those legacy applications are static, let alone they're old and still being used, but static in terms of you keeping the data for regulatory compliance, data security, that side of things, still support business processes. If they're static applications, that's money you're just throwing away. And lastly, they talked about the lack of planning for legacy, handling legacy systems can mean redundancy in systems, duplicates around applications, data reporting, that side of things, which can be a risk to your business.
Yeah, it's fairly clear then that legacy applications can indeed be holding your business back. So as we all know, really, agility is key really to remaining competitive in business. In terms of IT, IT systems, they need to respond rapidly and to be able to support new features and functionality that come along and need rolling out. Well, legacy applications themselves can be difficult to scale and adapt. So, these systems, these aging systems may lack sort of capacity or computing power to accommodate sort of modern business needs and to be able to scale up. Talking about things like, an increased load on the system can cause, older applications and systems to run slower, or indeed in some cases even fail. And as Sam's alluded to earlier, the money, the IT budget is better spent on the new initiatives rather than supporting those old legacy applications in your IT estate.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Going further forward, let's talk about how our older applications, these legacy applications, are hampering digital transformation. I mentioned this earlier, and I think Phil touched on it as well. Most IT teams have only got finite resources. There's only so many of us to go around. And legacy application support means you're going to have less focus on digital transformation. And digital transformation isn't just a buzzword, it's a necessity in the current business climate, especially post-pandemic. A couple of years ago, we ran a survey just before the pandemic, funnily enough. We ran a survey of IT decision makers, and we can provide a link to this survey later on. It's available. The results are available on our website. And one of the interesting facts I wanted to pull out on there was that 93% of these IT decision makers recognize that legacy application support is an issue, that aging systems take a higher level of resources, that vendors, not us by the way, vendors are charging a premium to support older versions themselves. Internal costs are higher. You've got to have staff that are maintaining these applications, higher energy costs, that side of things. It is very important. Those costs are higher. And further, that they didn't necessarily have the staff available to make a fix if there was an issue on the application, on the server, the database, that side of things, and they felt their business was at risk if not.
Yeah, let's talk about that ever-important customer experience now. And as we know, for good customer service, businesses need to be able to access information quickly to be able to respond to, customer inquiries in a timely manner. And that, as a preference, needs to be in a single interaction. So by that, I mean, not having to call the customer back, or indeed sort of passing that customer to another department to answer queries and inquiries. So in that same survey that Sam just mentioned there, we also found that 62% of those questioned said that by not having access to historical data, that in itself leads to poor customer service. And following on, 70% agreed that business users find it harder, more difficult to retrieve that historical data from those legacy applications. This may be that the users, for example, haven't had training on what the IT departments consider obsolete systems, and those older systems themselves may be sort of unfamiliar with less user-friendly interfaces. So problems are on that front.
Yeah, Phil, and that segues nicely into the next bit I want to talk about, which was at this stage, I want to talk about a use case of how we helped a global banking organization to decommission applications and what they found. And this particular customer decommissioned a number of strategic legacy systems following historical mergers, be that historical departments merged together or even merging together of different organizations. And they ended up, as a result of these mergers, with 5 different business systems, all using either different divisions or different companies. And that ended up with a customer care team that was merged together or brought together, that were unfamiliar with these different applications. I mean, the majority of these were from the owning organization, and the vast majority of that customer care team, they didn't know how to use 4 of these other 5 strategic systems. As a result, as Phil mentioned, the customer care was suffering as part of that. So we help the customer to consolidate the data from those 5 applications into one common view. And although the customer care team needs to see different or the same data for different customers, by having the same view, no matter where the source of that data was, it's a huge improvement for them. It helped provide those staff with a familiar look and feel, and that itself improved business efficiency. It also helped this customer, and get this, to reduce their budget spend by the region of around a 6-figure sum every year. 6 figures. Imagine what you could do with that over 10 years. Lastly, a bit of a more around compliance and that side of things. Though it does help around business processing, all of this data from 5 applications was available in a central location. So all that historical customer information itself enabled improved customer service, but also led to greater compliance. Things like the right to be forgotten or data minimization. It's easier if you only have to go to one place to do that.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the problems associated with having legacy applications in your IT estate, but how do you tackle the challenges posed by business inefficiency due to users, end users having to access multiple legacy applications for that business information? Well, firstly, you want to identify the business processes that access those legacy applications. Remember the processes that access those, and these could be applications that are directly accessed. They could be applications that are accessed by newer systems, so hides the original data source. It could be, for example, a modern front-ended system that relies on that legacy application data as a sort of back end. It could also be static applications, and that's data that's no longer updated but kept for compliance or indeed any sort of other business reasons. And once you've done that, check if those any of those applications perform the same role. Mergers and acquisitions over time does lead to duplicate systems, for certainly in our experience in departments such as payroll, HR, CRM, and even financial packages. Once you've done all of that, then make a strong business case to move the legacy data, and it's the data that underpins those legacy applications, to a more efficient and secure solution where you can benefit from things like having a common interface layout used, a simplified layout that business users are therefore able to access the data that they need quickly and importantly in the format that they want that data. Those searches as well in a sort of more modern system should be faster and more efficient. And also, ultimately, those legacy application support costs that Sam mentioned earlier, all of those can be eliminated when you've removed the data from them.
Yeah. So how can we help? We've given some good hints and tips around identifying applications, the issues they cause, duplicate applications, legacy applications, issues with compliance, data security, that side of things. Well, how can we help with that? First of all, we've got experience in decommissioning legacy applications, plus our Clum's technology with its, it itself is designed to help with business efficiency and business processes, especially from a back end side of things. It helps to reduce costs. And Columbus itself has a very strong development roadmap. Therefore, it's a safe long-term repository for this legacy data, or the data from legacy applications, I should say. And the solution that we provide includes processes that we've developed over the years. So it doesn't matter which application server it is, what application it is, what database it is, we can help with that. We also mean that you can move multiple applications into one secure location. We talked about that helping improve business efficiencies. And then a very important point is that the data itself is available to support the business processes in the manner and the format that the business find most useful. All in all, reduce costs, maintain those legacy applications, and then even more so if you add more and more applications into the same platform. And I think I touched on it, but bringing multiple application data into one common look and feel really, it really does help business efficiency itself. So all in all, we can help in a number of areas.
That's right. Now, businesses these days, if they haven't already, are always talking about sort of moving to the cloud and moving data centers to the cloud. And, if you are thinking of moving your data center to the cloud, our Columbus technology that Sam mentioned earlier, it can help reduce those migration costs. What we say is, don't move each of those individual sort of legacy applications as they are. Move the data that underpins those applications into Columbus and then just run Columbus in your cloud. Each server carries costs even when virtualized in the cloud. So you don't want to be paying more than you need to, because you may need to pay maintenance for the software, even if that VM is powered down. And also alongside that, the infrastructure that's related to the support of those legacy applications, even if you've moved them to the cloud, that support or that sort of infrastructure around them, that still remains. But by moving sort of multiple legacy application data into Columbus, you're only moving that single application into your cloud. That's Columbus itself into the cloud. So the whole process becomes much simpler and also much more cost effective. Okay, so I think we've got to the point in the presentation where we're going to take some questions. So as a reminder, if you have got any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function of the WebEx controls. But I can see that we have already had a couple of questions that have come in, so this is good. So I'm gonna dive straight in here. We've got one here already from this one's from Fuji. Says you mentioned cloud. Can you confirm which cloud platforms you support? Now, I know I mentioned the cloud earlier, but Sam, you've been speaking with customers recently about this, so I'm gonna throw you the ball to answer this one if you don't mind.
Throw him the ball or the hot potato, Phil. So Fuji, thanks for the question. So predominantly we have customers running Columbus in AWS or Microsoft Azure. But it's basically anywhere where a VM can run within the cloud hosted environment itself. But we can also offer a hybrid approach of either on-premise application server or even in the cloud application server, but married then to cloud object storage. And we support several platforms there, things like EMC, Google, IBM, Amazon Web Services themselves, and Azure. So you can have a mix and match of different locations where the server is and then where the data itself is. So thanks for the question, and hopefully they've answered for you. Moving on, then the second question, I think, yeah, it looks like we've only got two. Nobody else is typing, though you've still got time. Jimmy, thanks for your question. You're going through a merger. Where should you start with those applications itself? Phil, I'm going to pass this hot potato over to you, and you can answer Jimmy's question on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, and thanks, Jimmy, for your question. Yeah, so it's all about identifying those candidate applications for decommissioning, really. So, first thing to do, I suppose, or certainly in our experience, is to check if any of those application candidates perform the same role within the business. I mean, we talked earlier about, you may have duplicate processes, duplicate applications supporting those processes in HR, payroll. I think we mentioned financial packages, that sort of thing. And holding a sort of an initial meeting, if you like, with the business users, analysts, and any other stakeholders, that will help you to identify those duplicate applications. And then once you've done that, you can move forward through the rest of the steps within your decommissioning project. But good luck with it, and do reach out if you need any assistance from us.
Great, thanks, Phil. Kazema, thanks very much for the question you've dropped in there. The question there is, how would legacy relational data Can it be stored and viewed in Columbus? Yeah, great question. Because I'd like to come back to you on that personally, or Phil will, because I think he's involved with you anyway. But the simple answer is we have a process that enables us to take database content in an automated process, get that into human readable content, and then make that addressable and searchable. Not like an SQL engine itself, but certainly to be able to support business processes. So we'll come back to you on that, and thanks for that question. I think that looks like it, Phil, for now.
Okay, I think so. Yeah. So thank you for your questions so far. We will we'll move on to the next section of the presentation. If you do have any further questions, then obviously reach out to Sam or myself following this this webinar. Okay, so moving on then, I want to leave you with a few sort of key takeaways from this session today before we go. First of these being that by not migrating that legacy data and and decommissioning your legacy applications, I suppose, you might not have that initial outlay, that initial sort of cost, but by ignoring the data security, the compliance, and the business risk issues that we've talked about now and also in previous webinars. This may end up costing you, the business, a whole lot more if not addressed. And I touched at the start of this presentation about things like reputational damage as well as regulatory fines, which are more immediate. And then in terms of decommissioning projects, identify those applications that are draining your IT resources and your budget, those that are holding the business back from implementing those new sort of strategic initiatives, such as, your digital transformation projects. And then consider the data that underpins those legacy applications. How does the business need this both now and also going forwards into the future? And when you've done all of that, make your business case to move that data, and that should be only the data that you need, to a single secure repository. And as I mentioned before in a previous section, if you're moving your data center to the cloud, whatever you do, don't move all of your static legacy applications. Move that data that underpins those applications into Columbus, and then run Columbus within your private cloud instead.
Great. Thanks for those wrap-ups there, Phil. Some good takeaways for us. Thank you very much for attending, everybody. We hope you've enjoyed them. Keep an eye out for more webinars that Phil and myself, as client service consultants, are going to be putting out. But it leaves me to say, enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for attending, and it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you.